Hi, this is the first video in a series on best practices for marketing study abroad and how to approach students. So to start out, I'd like to use an analogy that I use whenever I give presentations. Whenever I have students, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and sometimes seniors, I like to start out the same way by asking them a basic question. I ask them to fast forward with me to the day of graduation. They've just walked across the stage, they've just shaken the president's hand, and they're exiting. And I ask them, what two things are you going to have upon your graduation from college? And the first one is easy. It's the diploma, it's the degree, it's your academic record. They get that one immediately. That's obvious. The second one is a little more elusive. Almost always, some student in the back will pipe up and say, we're going to have debt, which for a lot of students is true, but not all students have debt when they walk across the stage. So what's the second thing that every student has? And the answer is simply a story. They have an account. They have something that they've done throughout their time in college, good or bad, that is part of their experience. And I segue with that to say, so what's your story going to be? Because you have time, especially freshmen. You're really writing this story now. What are you going to make of your time in college? Because when you go across that stage and you either go to grad school and continue your education or go to look for a job, that's what they're going to ask you on your resume. The GPA is only a small part of it. They're going to ask you, hey, what was the story? What did you do? What are the things that make you a good candidate for the next step? And so I like to get them thinking in that vein, because I then ask, have you considered study abroad? Would study abroad make a good story for you when you get out of college? Would future employers look at that and say, this is something interesting? Because the reality is, even nationwide today, 95% of students do not study abroad. So that's what I get students thinking about, is the story, because it's very important when they cross that stage. Now I'd like to talk about a different story, a very important story, one that has affected especially American culture, but even other cultures around the world. That all-important story is the story of Gilligan's Island. Gilligan's Island is just a 30-minute show. It was launched, I believe, in the 60s, and it was set up in the format of about 20 minutes of programs, 20 to 23 minutes, and then the rest of the time, was filled with commercials. And the point of Gilligan's Island, there was really two questions you ask there, too. The first question at the start of every show is, are they going to get off the island? And that was always answered by the end of the show. The second question, which was equally as important, is who's prettier, Ginger or Mary Ann? That one's far more subjective. You go back and forth. You got to figure out, is it the movie star or is it the girl next door? And you had commercials 3 times in there to interrupt you so that you had time to ponder that question. You could sit on the edge of your seat and say, are they going to get off the island? Are they going to get off the island? And you could also try to figure out, was it Ginger in this episode or was it Mary Ann? The reason I bring up that example is to talk about the model that TV brought to how we market. And when you watch a TV program, you consume the show. The only interaction you have is either with the people around you or just watching the show in general. And there's not a lot of ability to interact. It's very closed. It's one way. You get whatever comes across the TV, and that's how you're marketed. And the commercials, they're just an interruption. There's no reason for Tide to be slammed in the middle of Gilligan's Island, but that's how they make the money, to keep the show going and pay the actors and the crew and everything. The new model today is you can watch Gilligan's Island on the internet. You can do it with no commercials, and you can do the same thing of sitting there and consuming the program and wondering, are they going to get off the island? And who's prettier, Ginger or Mary Ann? But there's a difference. One is the commercials are now on usually sidebars. Google has done a phenomenal job, sometimes a scary job, of knowing what certain consumers like. And so they put it on the side, and you can watch the entire 20-minute show without any interruptions. The difference here is with Google is what's one author calls permission marketing. It's the idea that instead of being interrupted in a TV show, we give permission as a click. Google will put up, oh, this person likes cooking and classic cars and sports. So they'll put up different ads that might work for you. And from there, we do clicks if we want to see it or not. And that's how marketing really works. The difference, though, with Gilligan's Island today is we don't just sit there and consume it. We have two other options available to us. One is to produce, and the other is to share. With Gilligan's Island now, I guarantee you could go on and find blogs completely devoted to who is prettier, Ginger or Marianne. You could definitely find threads that tackle that earth-shattering question, probably in different languages. So we need to look at the internet model for how we do study abroad. When I studied abroad in 2006, I went on a program to Ecuador, consumed the program, and then came back and tried to share it, but it was kind of difficult. It was hard to produce something that could be shared because I was unsure how to do it. And that was really the question I looked at for almost 3 years before I had some significant breakthroughs, because I didn't see any ways to produce or share. Now we have options. With the technology and as things have evolved, there are ways for our students to produce as they consume their program and then share it with the world. And that's what we need to look at. That's what in marketing we need to ask questions of: how can we create situations so that students can go out on programs, consume what they do, the experience of it, and then share with other people. And the point is, because it comes right back to that story, if they can produce a good story and then share it with the world, it gives them many more opportunities than even I had in 2006, only 4 years ago, for how they can interact with the world, how it kicks up what their story is and their value immediately back home, but also in studying abroad. Also showing students, marketing it forward of this is what students have done. So my question is, what's the best, least distracting method to take what students do abroad and get it out there to the world? Thank you very much.